Chapter 5 Realizing the Truth. Lunar date 3.1625.2.21. 10 hours and 12 minutes after day rise. The sun shone brightly over Emmeline's house as the families of Daniel, Emmeline, and Josef continued to spend their day together. Instead of enjoying the instant satisfaction of fabricated food, the families decided to embark on an afternoon of preparing food the old-fashioned way. It was a relaxing change of pace. Daive and Dona Rickard, Josef's parents, were nearly finished barbecuing chicken, fish, and burgers while the others were prepping salads and appetizers to enjoy. No one was going to go hungry. In fact, it was more than likely they were going to eat way too much. In the house, the teenagers were in charge of pouring the drinks. They had iced raspberry tea, iced coffee, luntima, soda, water, apple juice, and some cranberry white wine for those looking for a stronger drink. They were nearly finished with the drinks when Daniel grabbed his younger brother, Tallon, and snuck outside to one of the food tables. Checking their surroundings, they stealthily grabbed a few corn chips and scooped some of the spicy ranch dip into a dish before returning to their friends. Tallon, with all the sincerity he could muster as a 10-year-old, glanced up at Daniel. "I'm glad you came home this weekend. I've missed doing things like this with you." Daniel rubbed his hand through Tallon's pale yellow hair. "I have too. Don't worry, when I'm home for the summer, we'll do a lot more things together." "Good," Tallon replied. "But will you have time? I know you'll have to practice a lot for the World Championship." "Yeah, we'll have to practice. That won't take up all my time, though. I promise. We'll have some fun adventures during the break." Tallon smiled and Daniel smiled back. Even though there were roughly 8 years difference between them, the two brothers enjoyed their time with one another. This wasn't to say there weren't days where they wanted to beat each other up or get as far away from each other as possible. They were brothers after all. Still, Daniel wouldn't trade the relationship for the world. "Are you excited to come to our prep tournament?" Daniel asked, even though he already knew the answer. "Very! We've loved watching your matches in class. One of my friends, Matthew, is a Red Eagles fan. But I stand by the Shadow Gryphons. I know you can win." "Thanks, Tallon. I hope we don't disappoint." "You won't," he assured Daniel. "Were you able to get the video of that match locked?" "Yeah, we did. I received the confirmation a couple days ago." Would you mind if I was able to take a look at it?" Tallon asked sheepishly. Daniel stopped. At first he was hesitant to let his younger brother study the video, even though he remembered the feeling of being left out because of his age. Tallon, however, always had a knack for seeing things differently than others. Upon entry of primary school at age 4, he scored the highest in his age group in some of the basics like speech, writing, reading, and numbers. It wasn't a surprise to anyone that his strengths were discovered to be science and math once he started secondary school at age 8. The past 2 years have been spent developing those skills, even more so that once he arrived at the academy in 3 more years, he'd be ready to choose an area of specialized study in the realm of science or math. Opposite to his brother, Daniel absolutely hated math. One of the best days of his life was when he was told he'd never have to be in another advanced math class his entire life unless he chose to. Needless to say, he never did, even though he still used the basics of math on a regular basis. When the current education system was first implemented over 1400 years earlier, educators learned the importance of finding and investing in a child's strength. The changes in society were almost instantaneous. People loved their careers because they were working in areas they enjoyed. Daniel believed the change was one of the best moves implemented in the early years of the Age of Progress. Once prestige entered into the picture, the educators took it upon themselves to ensure no parent tried to cheat the system so their child would be granted a more prestigious career, like being a politician or part of the military. Anyone caught tampering with the system, whether they be an educator or a parent, was sentenced to life imprisonment with no chance of being released. Only a few ever tried, and the law was followed to the letter in order to maintain the sanctity of Palmaran culture. "On one condition," Daniel finally replied, and they started walking again. "Sure, anything." "You don't tell anyone outside the people here today that I am letting you see it. And if you ever find anything, you tell me first." "Absolutely," Tallon exclaimed. "If you want, you can send it right now." Once children entered secondary school, they were given their first nexus. Time restraints and blocked access were implemented and heavily monitored by parents and teachers. Back when the Nexi were first introduced, they allowed anyone to have full access to the Aether. It took a couple generations to realize the mistake that was made. Most of the young people had an excess of anxiety and depression based on their online interactions. Once they started to be monitored, the numbers started to drop. At age 12, they were given a little more freedom. All restrictions were dropped at age 15, though they were still monitored until after they graduated from the academy. If the parents or professors believed a student was being too heavily affected by the online society, then they implemented a strategy to help them keep a healthy balance. Sending his brother the video wasn't a breach of any age restriction. All the parents would need to do was approve the transfer. Daniel made a mental note to inform them before sending it to Tallon. I will share it with you tomorrow before we leave. I know you, Tallon. If I give it to you now, I won't see you again this weekend. Let's have fun together, then you can get to work. At first, Tallon appeared slightly disappointed. It dissipated quickly. Well, they say time flies when you're having fun. I'm going to have the most fun with Emmy, Seth, you, and your new girlfriend. Daniel stopped dead in his tracks. She isn't my girlfriend. Who told you she was? Seth may have mentioned something. Of course he did, Daniel sighed. Seth is misinformed. Abigale and I are just friends. Oh, okay, Tallon tilted his head slightly. But why do you look at her the same way Dad looks at Mom? Daniel's eyes nearly bulged out of his head. Am I that obvious? Trust me, Tallon, we're only friends. Before they could keep walking, two soft hands landed on their shoulders. Here are my two boys, Tomas Sheppard said lovingly until he noticed what they were carrying. Sneaking some food before we say the blessing? Guilty as charged, Daniel admitted. Tomas reached down, grabbed a chip, and loaded it with some dip. I won't tell your mother if you won't. He smiled and ate the chip. The three of them laughed together as Tomas drew them close into a hug. I believe the weather is supposed to stay clear tonight, Daniel. I'd love to show you and your friends some of the stars I've been studying. Are you interested? Definitely, Dad. Tomas Sheppard worked as an astronomer for the Trufon Planetarium. No doubt it was where Tallon inherited his love for math and science, while Daniel was more like their mother, Clara. Perfect! We can start once the sun sets. I'll mention it to the others. Great. Also tell them that lunch is ready. That's why I came over here to begin with. Daniel chuckled. All right, Dad. We'll bring the drinks out to the table. Love you, boys, Tomas said as he walked back towards the tables. Love you too, Dad, they both replied. The two brothers returned to the group of others inside. They shared the reward of their pillaging before carrying the drinks out to the tables. Maxie, the shepherd's golden retriever, even received a few snacks from Seth. Tasty, isn't it, Maxie? The retriever spun in a circle and his tail started to wag uncontrollably. Did that taste good, buddy? Want another one? Seth fed Maxie another chip. Come on, let's go outside. I'm sure you will get some more food. Maxie willingly followed Seth out into the lawn, yearning for more food. I can't remember the last time I ate food not prepared by a fabricator, Abigale told Daniel. We like to do it every so often. The ingredients are still fabricated, though. Mom and Dad didn't go out and kill a cow and then make the burgers, Daniel laughed. Though I hear some people still do that. Everyone used to before the age of progress, Abigale reminisced. Sometimes I wonder how it would be to live in a time where cosmology isn't present. How would life be different? How would my life be different? Have you ever tried out one of the historical programs on the solar deck? Oh, of course. I wouldn't be much of a history nut if I didn't, now would I? Abigale almost seemed offended. Daniel was going to apologize when he noticed the slight smirk on her face. Fair point. He stifled a laugh. They're great. It isn't the same, though. I know it isn't real. It's the interpretation of what is written in the historical record. Plus, the safety features of the solar deck hinder me from being in any real danger. I can force Candy to put me in the perfect spot to hunt where I don't have to wait long. I can live in a village and go on an adventure with friends, but I can't die. I don't have to worry about taxes or having enough money for my family to eat or be warm in winter. There isn't any risk. She paused for a moment, placing the pitcher of iced coffee on the table in front of her. And risks are what make life beautiful and worth living. With every word she spoke, Daniel's attraction for her became even stronger. No, Daniel, don't focus on that. Just respond to her statement as if you were talking to Emmeline. Maybe use a little less sarcasm, though. I agree, and this has me thinking. In our project about Talani Arusa, we need to elaborate more about this in her life. Everyone knows about her, but not everyone really knows her story or why she did what she did. Why was she a bounty hunter? What led her to that life? I think if we can answer those questions, we can give a more complete answer as to her contributions to the fall of the Drakon Empire and the rise of the Age of Progress. Those are some excellent questions. When we get back to the Academy, we should check out the Solar Deck files and see if there are programs which dig into this. We can enter the program as observers as opposed to taking on the role of someone. This will allow us to have a little more freedom in taking notes. I think that is a great idea, Daniel nodded. I'm excited to see what we can find. Me too, she said with a natural smile. With the food and drinks all placed on the tables, Tomas Sheppard stood up and held his hands out in front of him. Almighty Arnion, we thank you for this time of fellowship. We thank you for the many blessings in our lives and the food that has been prepared today. May we continue to be the light as we follow your way. Daniel wondered what Abigale thought of his father's prayer. He was too nervous to ask in case it was an awkward conversation. Abigale, on the other hand, was more than willing to inquire. Do you always pray before a meal? Her question was genuine and that eased Daniel's mind. It seemed to come more from curiosity, as did the rest of her questions about Arnion. Typically, just a way to remind us to be thankful for what we have in the world around us. I really like that. It's like a pause, a slowing down of time to force us to reflect on the world around us. I may have to start doing that. Sometimes life seems so hectic at times that I don't even know what I'm thinking or why. Emmeline leaned over, obviously eavesdropping. Trust me, it's one of the very few things that keep me sane at the Academy. I value my time of taking a pause and just recentering myself on Arnion in the way. I'm one of the things that keep you sane, right, dear? Josef inputted while adding ketchup to his burger. Some days, Emmy admitted, some days you're one of the reasons I need to take a pause. Abigale giggled. You two act differently than most people who are in a relationship. Neither Emmeline or Josef knew what to make of her comment. Oh, no. I don't mean that in a negative way. It is refreshing. Trust me, most relationships are so sterile and forced. When Dorn and I were together, we did things mainly because it seemed like the right thing to do, not because we genuinely wanted to be with the other person. Don't get me wrong, we did have some fun times, but they were as rare as finding... She looked around as if searching for an answer. Well, as rare as eating a home-cooked meal. She gestured to the food in front of them. As followers of Arnion, we don't put too much stress on our prestige numbers, Seth answered. We're called to live with compassion towards all people. Kinda hard to do if we're constantly comparing ourselves to one another. Abigale swallowed a bite of her burger. Does this mean you don't think people who don't follow Arnion aren't compassionate? Daniel knew the question she was truly asking. She wants to know if we think of her differently because she doesn't follow Arnion. Do we view her as less because she doesn't follow the proclamations like we do? It's an honest question. Please, Arnion, give me the right words to say.
I will.
Let me answer, Seth, if you don't mind. Go for it, Daniel. I'm not sure how much you know about those who follow Arnion. There are actually 4 different groups. One group believes that the proclamations are law, and they focus on the judgment of Arnion against the world due to some obscure words from a prophet hundreds of years ago. They'd probably say people who don't follow Arnion aren't really compassionate, and that they are doing it because of some selfish desire. Another group thinks that as long as your good outweighs your bad at the end of your life, you'll be fine. In contrast, we believe many people are compassionate, honorable, tender, gracious, etc., who don't follow Arnion. We believe Arnion produces these traits in all people, regardless of if they follow the proclamations or not. Remember, the 9 proclamations are not a law you abide by, but rather a code you live by in pursuit of harmony, right? Abigale finished. He nodded. Yes, it isn't about good outweighing bad. It is about the intent of your heart and your relationship with Arnion. So then, why does it matter if a person follows Arnion or not, if they can still have all those traits? Daniel noticed how she avoided using a personal pronoun. We are asked this question a lot, actually. For some reason, people think they have us trapped when they ask us this question. I know that's not your intent. Daniel raised his hand, reassuring Abigale before she could voice her objection. Throughout history, Arnion has granted some of his followers special gifts. They're the prophets who receive messages about the future through visions and dreams. They're the clerics who are able to heal. Druids are able to command nature to come to their aid when needed. In every few generations, someone is blessed with the gifts of all three. They are known as a Kohanim. A Kohanim? Sounds like ancient Morosian, like from the Age of Arnion era. Daniel was impressed. That's right. What makes these gifts manifest in some and not others? Abigale continued to ask questions in between bites from her meal. Does Arnion just choose? Honestly, no one knows why certain people are chosen and others aren't. The caveat is these gifts are only used when Arnion gives permission to do so. They are not able to go around and use the gifts whenever they feel like it. In fact, the fourth group of Arnion followers don't even believe in these gifts. They think it's all made up and foolish. They also don't even believe in Drakon. Daniel realized he was on the precipice of going off on some spiritual tirade that might confuse Abigale even more. Anyways, for those of us who believe in the gifts, we know that the person who has bestowed these gifts is completely focused on following Arnion. If they weren't, the gifts would be useless. Okay. But not everyone gets these gifts, so that can't be the only difference. It isn't, Daniel smiled warmly. The other sign isn't as obvious. He took a bite of his barbecued trout. When we follow the proclamations, and by that I mean we are consciously striving to follow them since we are far from perfect, we hear Arnion's voice guiding us. It isn't an audible voice per se, yet it isn't our own voice inside of our heads. When we aren't following the proclamations, and again I mean a conscious decision to not follow them, Arnion's voice isn't as clear until eventually you may not hear Arnion's voice at all. It is all a little hard to explain actually if you've never experienced it. And all three of you have? Yes, they replied in unison. Have any of you experienced times when you haven't heard Arnion's voices clearly? Oh yeah, Daniel admitted while sneaking some of his food to Maxie under the table. To be honest, there are some times at school I get so caught up in everything that I forget to focus on spending time with Arnion that I struggle to hear. Abigale paused with a drink of her iced tea before continuing her line of questioning. How do you get back on track? It's different for everyone, Daniel responded. For me, I need to step away and sit outside in nature and spend time refocusing on my relationship with Arnion. I listen to music, Emmy stated. The lyrics and sounds help me to reorient my soul. What about you, Seth? Abigale inquired. I sit in my chair in my room and drink coffee. Simple, and it works. If I'm understanding correctly, while showing compassion is a part of following Arnion, it doesn't automatically mean the person is following the way because they may not have a relationship with Arnion. And that is the determining factor. And if someone has a relationship with Arnion and they follow the proclamations, they will hear Arnion's voice. Daniel ran over the comment in his mind a few times before responding. Yes, that is correct. Amongst those who claim to follow the way, we are the minority because of this belief. None of the other groups think that you need to hear Arnion's voice. For us, it is how we know we are in communion with Arnion. Abigale appeared to process the new information. Okay, I believe I have an understanding now, but I want to go back to something earlier. Abigale turned her attention across the table. Seth, you said followers of Arnion don't care about prestige numbers. If that is the case, how do you determine what last name to take when you get married? When surnames became more common at the end of the Age of Arnion, people simply hyphenated the names together alphabetically. This continued through the Age of Drakon unless you were married to the Imperator. They'd always take the surname Zell in honor of Drakon's surname. To avoid a convolution of names, children took the last name of the opposite parent. Once prestige began in the Age of Progress, the system switched to take the name of the person with the highest prestige. However, the followers of the Way did something different. We do the opposite, Emmy stated. We take the last name of the one with the least prestige in an act of humility. Not sure why it matters anyways, Emmy shrugged. Once you are married, the numbers are combined. A way for people to hold power, I guess. Abigale turned to Daniel. Since your mother owns her own cafe, which is the least prestigious career, Sheppard is her original surname. Correct, Daniel nodded. It puts us at odds with the rest of society. Often we are ridiculed through, usually behind our backs. We try not to let it bug us. We are doing what we believe to be right. People ridicule you? Oh yeah, they think we are rejecting the progression of our age. I am sorry about that, Abigale grimaced. A lot of people think prestige is the only thing that matters in this world. We're used to it, Daniel shrugged. Besides, this way we can focus on our careers and our relationships without having to spend time trying to outdo others. There is still one thing I don't get about prestige, Seth said as he leaned back in his chair. Military pilots are some of the most respected. I use the exact same skills, but I'll be piloting a civilian starship. It isn't like we're at war with anyone. They aren't using their flying skills in battle. Emlyn reached over and patted Seth on his shoulder. Remember, we don't really care about prestige. I love you because of who you are, not because of your career. Well, that may be true, Seth replied. I won't be able to model as much as a civilian pilot. They only ask the military pilots to do all of that. Abigale nearly spit out her iced coffee. You want to model? Emmy pulled her hand back and rubbed her temple. Just ignore him. He has this weird dream to be a model. Weird? Have you seen my muscles? Seth started flexing his skinny, pale arms. This caught the attention of Thomas Sheppard. Seth, please, put those away. You're putting the rest of us to shame. In fact, I don't think I am worthy to be sitting around this table with you and your muscles. Seth stopped flexing. I understand, Thomas. I'll stop. I don't want you to feel embarrassed. Daniel, Abigale, and Emlyn all started laughing. Thank you, Thomas chuckled. I appreciate your kindness. The late afternoon continued as they indulged in way too much food. After resting from the meal, the 4 teenagers decided to go for a swim in Emlyn's pool. Her parents, Deborah and John, came with them but didn't join them in the water. They sat in the lounging chairs and asked them questions about their semester. The days shifted to evening and the sun started to fall behind the horizon. They emerged from the pool and started to dry themselves off. As Daniel was rubbing his hair, he felt a shove from his side. He tried to stop himself, but he couldn't. Before he knew it, he was back under the water. He surfaced and shook the liquid from his eyes. He saw Abigale where he used to be standing, laughing. Oh, I see how it is. He swam to the side, leapt out of the pool, and started chasing Abigale. She didn't waste any time running away. She launched herself over the nearby fence and ran through the grass. Daniel did the same. She is quite fast, he admitted to himself. I may not be able to catch her. They were both laughing as he pursued her. Even Maxie joined in on the fun. He was chasing after them and barking. Daniel, it was an accident, I promise. I highly doubt that. Don't listen to her, Daniel. I saw her do it, Seth called out. Daniel started to reply until he heard Seth scream, followed by a loud splash. Keep running, Abigale, Emlyn cheered. What do you think I'm doing? Abigale screeched as she rounded the corner of Emmy's house. Daniel slowed up and thought of a quick game plan. He opened the front door and started running towards the back of the house where there was a second door. He ran outside again and saw Abigale running towards him with her head looking behind her. She noticed him in the last couple seconds and tried to slow up. She couldn't. Her shoulder collided with his chest and the air was knocked out of his lungs. At the same time, he reacted and wrapped his arms around her so she wouldn't hurt herself as they tumbled to the ground. Are you all right? Daniel managed to say as his breath was slowly returning. Abigale's head was nestled into his neck, and her body, though still wet, felt warm against his skin. She lifted her head and stared into his eyes. That was a smart move, Arnion boy, she smiled, using the nickname she called him back at the museum cafe. I'm good. How about you? I ran into you and your body's the one that hit the ground. I think I'll be fine. Daniel shifted different parts of his body. Nothing felt out of place. Yeah, I'm good. Maxie came over and started licking his face. Thanks, boy. Abigale wrestled some of Maxie's fur as she stood to her feet. Then she helped Daniel up. You may want to jump back in the pool. You have some grass and dirt all over your back. Daniel reached behind him and pulled some grass off. He flicked it into her hair. Hey! Looks like you need to get back in the pool too. I guess I deserve that for pushing you in. Maybe a little, Daniel smirked. Behind Abigale, the sun was nearly beneath the horizon. Her body glistened against the red sky. He felt the urge to reach out and kiss her. It was almost the perfect moment. No, I can't. We are just friends. That's it. Still, the urge was becoming almost irresistible. Hey, Daniel, Tomas's voice called out from around the house. It's almost time to look at the stars. Are you ready? Daniel felt like his father's intervention was saving him from making a huge mistake. Yeah, Dad, we'll be right there. He lowered his voice and spoke to Abigale. We should go jump in the pool to clean off and get dressed. Race you there. Abigale took off running and Daniel followed. 10 minutes later, they were out in the front lawn of Daniel's house with Tomas's telescope set up. Clara, Daniel's mother, made one of her famous coffees for Abigale. She was absolutely smitten by the taste. Tomas started pointing out different stars. His voice started to fade from Daniel's mind. He was too busy watching Abigale drink her coffee as she intently listened to his father. Despite all of his best intentions to keep his emotions in check, he knew he was unable to do so. It was like Seth said, if the right girl comes along, you will find that she's the only thing that can't wait. With every passing second, Daniel was realizing the truth of the situation. He was in love with Abigale Sharpe. Thank you for listening to my book Palmara, A Dying Breed. I'd love to hear your feedback. What do you like? What do you think needs some work? What are you most interested to see happen? What questions do you have? At the end of every chapter, I'll have these slides that show how time works in Palmara, plus the different sayings and terms to help you engage with the world. As well, the characters who appear in each chapter will be found in the video description. Be sure to check it out. And if you're enjoying this and enjoy other stories, please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. You can always join the Discord with the link in the description as well. Until next time, Hinei Akmatov, which means how pleasant it is for humanity to dwell in harmony with one another. Take care.